Let me stop sharing screens. Bill, do we have any questions in the chat?
The first question was from Jeffrey. Should passing civics be a requirement in order to graduate?
No, perhaps. I'm not so sure about making that a requirement to graduate, but I think it's important. And I don't know. Do we say that passing any other grade is a requirement to graduating? I think that generally we should graduate kids. We should graduate kids when they've met a proficiency in a number of subjects. But I'm not so sure that you want to say passing civics or passing math or passing shop or anything is a requirement to graduate. But certainly we have to teach it.
I know when I went to school, and this was eons ago, a basic understanding of how our government works, a class in that was required to graduate 8th grade. And the reward when you did that was a trip to Springfield to see all the Lincoln sites. And I was in high school, you had to pass a Constitution test in order to graduate.
I can support those ideas.
Wasn't that way everywhere, perhaps, but where I went to school in Central Illinois, it was.
Illinois does have a civics requirement. It's very basic, but it does have a civics requirement to pass high school.
Very good. Thank you. What's the next question?
The next question again is from Jeffrey. It should teaching about the sins of America be part of civics? Which I think you mentioned.
I did mention that, and I'm not wild about the phrase "the sins of the past," but I do think that we do need to understand how we have evolved, how we moved away from allowing slavery, how we gave voting rights to more and more people. I mean, these are important improvements in forming a more perfect union. And I know that in some areas, people don't want to talk about the past because, it makes people feel bad. Nonsense. Yeah, I think that part of our history needs to be an understanding of how we no longer allow some things that we used to allow. And part of our civics should be how we made those changes. So if you want to talk about that as being a recognition of the sins of our past, okay, I wouldn't use those words, but still, I feel that, personally feel that that's important. Because if we want to continue to form a more perfect union, we have to understand how we have done so in the past, why and how.
Okay, next question is from Sandy. Is it true that Sandra Day O'Connor has curriculum that lay people can use to teach civics?
I don't know. Is it? If she has some curriculum that we can use, I would love to see it, and I will go look for it. But it's not come to my attention yet. Let me take a note on that myself.
Yeah, and if Sandy has a link, just drop it into the chat. We can pick that up later. Okay. Then Joyce made a comment that Illinois does have standards for graduation, and she put a link in the field that listed the requirements.
Great.
And I believe that's the one that she was just talking about. And then Paul Cook just put a question mark, Democratic Constitutional Republic. I don't know if you want to comment on that or not.
I'd be glad to comment on it. My understanding of the phrase, let me say this. I often see people say, no, we're not a democracy or a republic, which is kind of nonsense, because our republic has always been a democracy. It's always been an indirect democracy. It is a constitutional republic. It's a republic founded by a constitution that has a strong Bill of Rights. And I think that we need to teach the fact that our republic is a democracy. And we need to stop people from thinking that you can't be a democracy if you're a republic. I mean, that's nonsense. If you just look at the definition of the words, you can see that you can be both a democracy and a republic. So a lot of people just have the wrong ideas about that. And that's an example of how our civics education has failed us.
Thank you. Also, Linda said, I found about this through the UIC's website, and they have a free training program for adults and high schoolers. And it's a website that says the Citizens Campaign Power-Civics. And that link is in the chat so that anybody can pick that up.
Thanks. I will certainly be happy to look at that. I'm not aware of that. I appreciate you bringing that forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and then Linda also noted that I'd like to know more about the rates of generations saying they support our government. Linda says, I do think that part of Gen Z's answer is due to gun violence in schools and only seeing our government sending thoughts and prayers. When your government seems to be okay with you getting gunned down in school, maybe that answer is also a trauma response. So more of a comment. I don't know if you need to.
I think that's a valid comment. I mean, when you find the younger you get, the less impressed you are with our democracy or how our country is run.
Yeah.
I could well understand how the younger you are, the more concerns, the more doubts you have about whether this country is run for your best interests. And once again, this goes back to not only do we want to improve how we teach civics, we want to improve how our country is run so that we don't have high economic inequality. We don't have gun violence in schools. We don't have many of the problems that these kids look at and say, what, this is a democracy? What, this is what I get for democracy? This is not interesting to me. So I fully understand that comment and I agree with it 100%. So Bill, let's go.
I have a little comment on that if I'm allowed to make one.
Yes, please do. Please do.
I think the person making that remark doesn't understand that the government in itself is not a monolith, and it's not a one mind, hive mind. The government very much is a vehicle that's designed to carry us, the mechanism in the vehicle that's designed to carry us to the goal of how we define democracy, which includes fairness for everybody. But you can't say, well, the government is not protecting us, the government is not supporting us when the car breaks down on the way getting you to, the vehicle breaks down on the way getting you to that goal. It's the people who didn't maintain the vehicle, the people who didn't put proper fuel into the vehicle, the people who didn't program the vehicle in the right direction. All of these people, for different reasons at different times, are the ones who are not delivering the services and the protection you want. The vehicle itself had no choice in that matter. The vehicle, well maintained and well guided and well driven and knows where it's going, at least with some consensus of where it's going, so it's not turning at every corner, then that vehicle will get you where you need to be. But then we don't criticize, well, I just won't own a car because the car won't take me where I need to go. No, you just need to maintain your car and direct the car properly and take an interest in what's happening to it, and it will get you there.
So let me say this about that. Certainly there is individual responsibility in anyone's success in the world. So yes, you have to maintain the vehicle. You have to maintain yourself. But when we as a nation make it difficult to do that, when we make it hard to get a good education, when you make it hard to go to healthcare, when you make it difficult to be able to vote, we're standing in the way of somebody maintaining their vehicle. And I think that when I talk about wanting to improve how our country works, we're saying we have to make it easier for people to maintain their vehicle so they can be responsible. And I think that when a lot of kids look at our country, they say this is awfully hard to maintain this vehicle. So I understand your viewpoint about personal responsibility, but you compare our country to many other countries, many other Western countries, and you'll find it's a lot easier to maintain that vehicle in all those other countries than it is here.
Well, my comment was not about the individuals themselves having responsibility for that, but rather the systems we support, the things that we tolerate, maybe the parties that we have built, that sort of thing. It's when you see something going off the rails, and um, maybe you just stop feeding that something. Maybe you decide, I'm going to be a part of the change. A person can't is not a single person or a certain single group of people or people who do not have the opportunities of others cannot be expected to take full responsibility for that. But you should need to have an interest in saying, no matter how bad things are, this country does offer me a chance to participate or have some impact, however small. Even
Yes,
if
but as I'm saying, not only do we want to teach our children what our government is and how to participate, we also need to improve our government society to be more supportive of these children, be more supportive of our citizens.
we don't disagree on anything.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on.
Okay, so Harriet makes a note here. She says, remember the value of a loyal opposition. Establish common goals even through the path to achieve this differs. And also, Lena and Dick said, a question, does the curriculum include the responsibilities of being a citizen?
There you go.
Well, okay. First of all, I think those are two different questions.
Yes, they
first
were. One was a comment.
Right. Well, yeah, but I think they're both worth talking about.
Okay.
You have to have two sides. You have to have it's not all just black and it's all just white. It's not all just big government and small government. There is a compromise. There is a way forward for us that finds a pathway that is not extreme right or extreme left, that we can to some extent agree upon. And in fact, the building of this curriculum was an exercise in that process of finding a compromise between one side and another. And our society needs to do that more and more. Our society is highly polarized right now, and that's a whole other area of discussion that we need to pursue. So yes, we need to try and work to have our society less polarized, but our civics education needs to help students understand all that. It needs to help them understand that where the two sides are and what the value of compromise is. And I think that that is part of the curriculum we're talking about here, especially since the curriculum itself was built through compromise. What was the second part of that question, Bill, again?
And this was a separate question from Lena and Dick. Does the curriculum include the responsibilities of being a citizen?
So the curriculum, as I understand it, helps students think through what it means to have a country like this. And certainly part of understanding what it means to have a country like this, to what it means to have different sides and competing interests, and means to find compromise and means to find progress forward, involves your participation in our politics. So the answer is resoundingly yes.
Okay, very, very good. The next question from Charles. From Chuck, why isn't C-SPAN part of every cable TV package?
I don't know how many people want to look at C-SPAN. It's really boring. I don't spend any time looking at C-SPAN, so I don't think that's very helpful personally. I'm sorry.
And then this is from Kerry. Just a note. He said you turned off the last slide too quickly. I guess it will be available later.
I'm going to send all the slides out to all of you. I'm going to send the slides to the people who registered and couldn't show up. So you'll have those links, and you can pursue this stuff. And as I said, if you want any further discussion, you want any further help, you got my email address in there. I'm here to help.
Then Mark makes a note, D211 has continuing education classes. We might add this continuing education offerings.
I'd be glad to do that. I've been doing some continuing education with Roosevelt University. And when you educate adults about this stuff, what you're doing is helping our society understand how we need to move our educational system in another direction. I mean, we need to educate adults about the issues in our government and what our adults can do to help fix those issues. But this is about changing how we educate our children so that we need to do less education of adults so they get this stuff as they're going through school. Those are two different issues. And so continuing education with adults, to me, is just a matter of building the political will to get our school boards and our school institutions to do a better job in the first place.
Okay. We have
Bill, could I make a comment or two here?
Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, Ed, for this. This is really timely. I just make some promo for C-SPAN because you can watch the idiots in Washington debate and you get some idea of maybe what goes on in there. I also like the weekend stuff of C-SPAN Book TV. They have some great authors talking about stuff like this, including Kermit Roosevelt III has a book on exactly this kind of stuff and how our Constitution has changed over time and how it's maybe not doing what we need it to do. So there's some things on there. But Ed, thanks for doing this. I think this is really timely. When I had civics in high school, I thought it was pretty boring and I wasn't really interested in it. But now I think we all can see how easy it is to contact your legislators.
Well, contacting legislators is part of it, but just an understanding of the issues at hand and the point that you have the ability to make a difference is something we need to make people aware of. And yes, we can make adults aware of it. We need to make students aware of it as part of education, because then we won't have to re-educate folks. And I take your point about CNN. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is from Paul. He says, do we care enough about compromise that we are willing to let conservative parents send their kids to different schools? Milwaukee, Wisconsin is a blue city, yet they have vouchers. It's more of a comment.
Well, there's a couple of things to say about that. First of all, in terms of desire for compromise or not, there's some recent polling that shows that Democrats greatly value legislators who are willing to compromise, and independents value legislators who are willing to compromise. And right now, the current state of the GOP is that they want to stand on principle. They don't care about compromise. Compromise is defeat. So yeah, I mean, I think that compromise is the way forward, but we have a political problem right now with that. As to allowing money to be taken out of the public school system so that people who don't want to compromise can just get their kids to have the education they wanted to have. I personally have an opinion about that. I think it's a bad idea to take money out of the public school system. But the most I would allow is somebody to take out the money they put in, because their kids are getting more education, more funding than what they put in. I mean, I put money into the public school system. I don't have any kids in the school system. So anybody who's got kids in the school system, their kids are being educated part by their money and part by my money. And I don't want my money taken out of the public school system. So I think it's a bad idea to let folks take money out of the public school system. And I would never allow anybody to take more out than they themselves put in.
Yeah. On this, just like a number of other compromises that are made to accommodate people who have religious or personal or whatever qualms with the school system, including homeschoolers and that, there's a fine line, but people who are guardians of the public interest and the public trust need to realize there's a fine line that you really shouldn't cross between compromising and being compromised. And after a certain point, you are the latter, and that is responsible management of your civic duty.
I agree.
Yes. So Ed, we have quite a few more questions and comments that have come in. Joyce put a note in here that said there is a civic requirement in Illinois to graduate from school in Illinois. And Joy responded with, "Wow, when did that happen?"
I've looked at the current legislation. I know, but I can tell that whatever the legislation we have is insufficient. And yet, let me say, I have seen some recent legislation that was proposed and not passed that specified I want this, that, and the other taught. And I don't think that, personally, I don't think that we should try and legislate a specific curriculum in our state legislature. I think we should let professional educators decide how to do this. And I think we should require education. We should require, I'm happy to require satisfying a requirement such as this to graduate. But I think that we need stronger curriculum. And I think I personally think the right way to go about this is at the school board level. Maybe we can do it at the state legislature level as well, but I would start at the school boards myself.
And just to add on, it is and I agree, it's not sufficient. There is, I think it's been out there for a couple of years, and the districts do have their own power to really create their own curriculum. That's good and bad, obviously, because some school districts, especially with a lot of money, they're going to have great AP classes or advanced classes which have really rich curriculums. But it is pretty basic, but there is something out there.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So a note from Chuck. He said, "Just don't call it sins."
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think we should call it sins. I think we should call it how we learn from our past and we form a more perfect union. And when you talk about sins, it turns people off.
That's an issue, right? Because I had a documentary idea about the same thing. The Sins of America. Should I change the name of that?
What
did you change it to, Jeff?
What
did you change the name to?
Well, it says the Sins of America.
Yeah, but we're all saying here that's a title that's going to turn people off and it's not constructive. So we need to find a better way to talk about where we were and why that wasn't good and how we've improved and put it in a positive spin. We've come this far. We need more progress, but talking about original sin turns people off. We need a more positive approach than that, Jeff.
It was for the History Channel.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. So Joy,
keep me in touch. Stay in touch so we can help come up with a better name for it.
I will do that, Jeff. I'll be happy to do that, Jeff. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So Joy makes a comment. Tom Hartman calls it a democratic republic, and I don't know if you have a comment for that, but then Chuck says we're like a proton. We can be a wave or a particle.
Okay, go look at the definitions. All republic means is not a monarchy. That's all that word means. People read more into it than what it means. And I'm a firm believer that we have to have a common definition of words or we can't communicate with another. Look in the dictionary. Republic means not a monarchy. It means a democracy. It means something that generally has a president. But the Republic of North Korea calls itself a republic. A word is only as good as what's behind it. Our republic is a democracy. It's always been a democracy, an indirect democracy, a democracy where we elect representatives who represent us in a legislature that passes the laws. That's our republic is a democracy. It's not everybody gets to vote on everything. It's not completely unbounded that two wolves can vote on what's cheapest for dinner because we have a Bill of Rights. So this is quibbling, as far as I'm concerned. It's just quibbling, and we should just stop it. Our democracy, our republic is a democracy. It's an indirect democracy. It's bounded by a Bill of Rights and a Constitution, and say that, and then move on and talk about the things that are really important to us, not quibbling over whether we're a democracy or a republic. That's nonsense.
So Lena and Dick say long term, our goal is to increase voter participation. How is this curriculum from K-12 actively instilling voter engagement? In 10 to 15, we see an increased percentage of voters. I think there should be a question mark there. Could there be proof of the effectiveness of this initiative?
Well, now, I'm not so sure that the proof of the effectiveness of the initiative is increased turnout. I think increased turnout's a good thing. And I think that if we help students understand how our government works and why it's important for them to participate, you're going to get increased participation. But to me, I think a better result of this would be lower polarization, would be more of a willingness to come together as a nation and find common solutions to our problems instead of fighting one another left and right. So I'm not so sure that increased turnout is the only goal here. However, I don't know that the curriculum has a specific focus on increased turnout. The focus is a deep understanding of the structure of our nation and our personal responsibilities in helping it form a more perfect union. And I hope that'll turn out to be higher turnout, but I hope more importantly that it'll turn out to be less polarization.
Okay. And then Chris says, should we offer these sorts of classes and courses to adults? And then he replies to his own question, looks like this has been answered. So
I think I answered it. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So Mark says, Bill Bennett, Reagan's Secretary of Education, proceeded to take out this national civics requirement. And here we are.
Could be. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And then Loretta said, I thought Illinois requires that high school students take 2 years of social science, which includes the U.S. history as a must, with options for the second year to be in anthropology, political science, and civics.
Could be. I frankly have not looked into exactly what the requirements are in our state.
That is true.
It's pretty clear that whatever they are insufficient.
Okay. And then Chuck corrected himself. He said, oops, photon, not proton. So
thank you.
So Joyce gives us a iCivics.org is a web-based version to teach civics established by Sandra Day O'Connor. That's referencing a note early on. And Joyce said, Joyce, please resend this link to everybody. Thanks.
Well, when we send the slides out, we're going to send the chat as well. So any links in the chat will be available to everybody when they get the slides. And I appreciate the feedback. I will certainly look at those and see what I think personally about it. But this is something for all of us to look at and for all of us to think about and then to take to our schools and to our school boards.
Does that include the transcript as well?
Yes, you'll get the chat. I mean, that if you mean by transcript, you'll get the chat. Yes.
Okay.
There's a difference between the two.
Yeah. Just a note from Chuck. He responds to his comments, I think, about photons and protons. He says, I like the analogy. So Joyce puts a note in here. I understand why young people are let down by adults and government because we're not doing enough to protect them from gun violence or climate change. There are a lot of young people doing great work still.
Sure. It's not just gun violence and climate change. I mean, their economic prospects suck. There's all kinds of things that young people want that we're not doing. And you might understand well why they're not all that enamored with the form of democracy we have here in this country right today.
Then Bill Bill puts a note in here, and he's got a link to O'ConnorInstitute.org. Has a number of programs to provide civics education, such as a student contest, videos on various government topics. I don't see a curriculum per se. I think that was just answered by Joyce. Then Joy put a note in there. She's how Illinois revised its civics ed requirement, and she has a link there also, civiceducation.org, Illinois-revised-civics requirements. And all these links are right up there in chat.
So about those kinds of links, are you saying that you think that we have legislation in place that solves this problem? Is that what you're saying? Unmute and answer that, please. Who put that comment in?
Me.
That was
Okay.
Joy.
I haven't read the article in full, but apparently there is a requirement. If the article, the title suggests that it's been modified, but I don't know if it solves anything.
All right, fine. Thank you very
I
much.
think it's useful to know what we have in place so that we
Yeah.
know what we're going to.
That's fine. It is useful to know what we have in place. But I'm convinced that whatever we have in place is not sufficient, and we need to do better.
So I'll apologize in advance because I'm probably going to get this first name wrong, but Aisha says, great point, remove the barriers. So we got
Thank you.
have to go back up. And then Sally says, sorry, I have to leave. Excellent presentation, Ed.
Thank
Thank you so much.
So Loretta has her hand up. Loretta, but go ahead and unmute and tell us what you have in mind.
Well, actually, it was answered, but I wanted to say about that article that talked about civics. It does say that, they have implemented it in Illinois, but there is a problem with the curriculum. So, and it needs to be worked on because it is not specific and teachers are having issues with it. So, it might be in some of the classes, but they said when they set it up as legislation, to make it a requirement, they ran into some problems with the educators because it is a difficult how it is required to be taught.
Thank you. I think this goes to my point. I don't think that we're in a position where we can get the legislature to solve this for us. I think we need to go to our own school boards. I think we need to go to our own schools, get the school behind you, and then go to the school board and solve it at the local level. If we can solve it at more and more local levels, maybe we can build up to the point where we have solutions that work that we can take to the state. But for what I've seen of state legislation, I think that we need to start at a lower level than that personally.
So Ed Sandy says, would mandating civic classes across the country give our students a common ground for engaging as citizens? That's what I feel I got.
Well, I mean, mandating things across the country is really hard. We're a union of states, and most educational requirements are specified at the state level. So my personal view is we need to worry about our state, our local schools, and build up from there. Maybe someday we'll get to the point where we can do this at a national level, but change comes from the bottom up in my experience. So let's start building from the bottom up and see how far we can go. And
I see a note in here from Christine that Jeffrey has her hand up, but
that's taken care of. That's taken care of.
Okay. Joyce says public schools should not have to charter / should not be going to charter or private schools.
Yeah, we've discussed that. I think that I'm certainly in agreement that we don't want to be taking a lot of money out of the public school system. The public school system is there to ensure a basic foundation for all students. And I don't particularly want to see parents being able to take their money out to take it to some other school. My point is that the public school system is not there to teach your child what you think he should know. The public school system is there to teach your child what we think he needs to know, not you.
So Ed, we're down to our last 10 comments and questions. Joyce says charter schools do not have the same oversight, and they are allowed to discriminate.
Same point. Same point.
Yeah,
That's fine.
and then Garrick says, to follow up on Sandy's question, what is the federal Department of Education's requirement for the teaching of civics across the country? And if red states choose to refuse teaching civics, can their federal funding be removed?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't even know if the federal government has overall requirements in this area. I mean, I'll look into it, but my understanding is that this stuff is more legislated at the state level than the federal level.
Yeah, and I think you'll enjoy this, Ed. Jeffrey says, Ed, can you come out to Fresno, California to help pick out people who will support your civics idea? If you know what I'm trying to say.
The answer to that is definitely not. I don't have time for that. Sandy's got
It's Fresno, California.
Yeah, I know where Fresno is, and I'm not going there right now.
Especially during the 2024 election.
No, forget it. I'm not going to California.
Well, if you change your mind, let me know, okay?
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. So did you say, Ed, that somebody has their hand up?
Sandy Gustafson has her hand up. I misspelled her. I mispronounced her last name, I'm sure. Sandy, unmute. What do you have to say? Sandy, did you have any other questions in the chat? We're waiting for Sandy to unmute.
We do. Loretta says documentary title is Pass to America. Susan says Illinois spends $75 million in vouchers that goes to private schools. Rauner created it. It's supposed to sunset at the end of this year. We need to make sure that it sunsets. And I think that's your answer on that.
I think that's an excellent point. I think we've discussed that several times now.
Yep. And then as a follow-up on that, Joyce says, absolutely, Susan, call your Illinois reps, tell them to invest in kids to sunset as planned.
Right.
Now, Joyce says, I don't see the link. Which link? The one you said Joyce thought she sent it to you directly and not to everyone.
Okay. What link was that? Link for what?
Joy, can you respond? It's evidently one that Joyce sent.
Earlier, you were reading a link that she said, and I didn't see it in the chat. So I thought maybe she sent it to you directly and not to everyone. That's a common. That's all.
I see a link from Joy Bunton to everyone. How Illinois advises civics eds.
No, I'm talking about Joyce with the CE on the end, not me, Joyce.
All right. I'm looking.
I did the icivics.org. That was I looked that up. Sandra Day O'Connor.
Okay,
is that the one?
I thought there was a different one that he was reading out loud because I wasn't reading along with he was reading. So I thought
there was another one in the chat, Joy, from Sandra Day O'Connor. So it is up there in the chat that somebody else posted.
Yeah, it's up there in the chat, and it's up there to everybody, not just to me.
No,
okay.
And that'll be included when we send out the video, the chat. So Loretta makes a comment, and understanding and what they can do to improve society. I don't know quite where that belongs in the conversation. So I'll go to Diane. As Winston Churchill once observed, democracy is the worst form of government, except for those others that have been tried.
Well, let me say this about that. The democracy in the U.S. is there's this group called The Economist. They run every year a survey of democracies in all the nations across the world, how democratic or non-democratic you are. And routinely, the U.S. falls into the second percentile. We're a flawed democracy. We're not a great democracy. People who say we were the first and greatest and best democracy of all times are full of it. We were the first, but we're not the best. We're nowhere near the best. We have a long ways to go to become to improve our democracy. And
an example.
There's plenty of examples, Jeff. I mean, gerrymandering, voters choosing.
I mean a country. No, I meant a country that has a better democracy than ours.
There's so many. Give me one example, Jeff.
Germany.
Fine, that's one of them. But there's so many. There's so many that have better voting rights. They have better. You see, democracy depends on a foundation. It depends on a foundation of the right to assembly, the freedom of the press, the freedom of education. You can't have a democracy that's really functional unless you have a population that's enabled, that's empowered to participate. In this country, we have too many people who are not empowered to participate. We have too many people who are suppressed. We have gerrymandering. We have a bunch of stuff that affects our democracy. And this is kind of aside from the topic today. The topic today is teaching about our government and how it works, including the flaws. So in the higher education, when we teach about how our democracy works, we got to teach the fact that we allow our politicians to choose their voters, for example. We have to allow the teaching of the fact that we will remove somebody's voting rights if we think they're a convicted felon. I mean, other countries don't do that. So at the highest level of education, we need comparative democracy so that we can understand the opportunities we have to improve our democracy. It doesn't mean that we're indoctrinating people to do it. At least we're letting them know that these options exist and let them decide for themselves. And that's why a lot of this educational roadmap we're talking about is based on questions. It's not based on telling you what to think. It's based on helping you think for yourself.
So Ed, we're down to a final few comments and questions. P&J says, and I think we'll all agree with this, good job in raising the issues, Ed, exclamation point, smiley face.
Thank you.
And then P&J says, how can we watch this a second time?
Well, we've recorded this, and when we send out the slides, maybe not right away, but we will also send a recording of this. But the other thing I'll say is that I'm happy to get together with any group of people and say it again. I mean, this is what I do. I educate the public on things, and you get five warm bodies together, and I'll be happy to show up in person or on a Zoom and say it again. This or any other presentations I give.
And just as an aside, Ed, would you be willing to give it to the current events group in Schaumburg?
No.
Okay.
I want nothing to do with those people.
So Garrett,
show the video, show them the recording, and you can be there when you do it. I'm not. Those guys are crazy. I want nothing to do with them.
So Garrick says, Ed, thank you for your very informative presentation. I think our biggest challenge is the whole woke versus unwoke ideology. There are too many Americans that don't want to learn the American history. And Christine has supplied a link to the YouTube NWSOFA channel where this will be posted, and where previous videos of Ed's various presentations have been posted. And believe it or not, that was the last comment.
Great. And going back to the last comment I heard, yeah, there are some adults who have an ego investment in where they are. And they, anytime I hear somebody say, all I know is blots, I say, okay, that means all you want to know is blots, which is why we need to do this in our schools. We need to do this with our children. We need to do this before they get set in some way that they can never break out of. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your interest in this topic. And as I said, any way I can help any of you move this forward with your school districts and your schools, I'm happy to help any way I can. Thanks very much, folks.
A commercial message right at the very end. Tomorrow night, that's Thursday night at 7:00, NWSOFA's climate change group is partnering with the Palatine Cool Cities and with Sierra Club to present plastics. And I believe the subtitle of that is We Can Do Without It. We're going
7:00 your time?
7:00 our time, 5:00 yours, Jeffrey. That will be an in-person at Palatine Library in the big room. It also will be a Zoom link that we posted. And then this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, NWSOFA will be at the Palatine JC Fest. We're going to be booth 69. Stop by, say hi, kick the tires, and get some free treats. All right.
All right.
Ed, thank you so much. This was absolutely great. I'm pretty sure everybody was happy, and we had great enrollment, and really, I think three screens of people that were listening here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. And I can never thank Bill so much. He's put so much effort into making these things successful. We wouldn't be where we are without you, Bill. Thank you. All right.
Hey, thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Stay in touch, Ed.
I will.
Okay. Oh, I think somebody.